Gabby Petito was a 22-year-old young woman with her whole life ahead of her. She was creative, adventurous, and full of ambition. She had a passion for travel, storytelling, and capturing moments through photography and social media. Like many in her generation, Gabby was inspired by the growing trend of van life, a movement that celebrated freedom from routine, minimalism, and adventure on the open road. To her, it wasn't just about traveling, it was about living life to the fullest, experiencing places most people only dream of, and documenting every step along the way. She and her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, decided to embark on a cross-country road trip across the United States in a converted white Ford Transit van. The plan was to visit national parks, camp under the stars, and share their journey online. To outsiders, this adventure seemed like a perfect escape, two young dreamers in love, chasing freedom and beauty while building a life together. Gabby's Instagram page blossomed with stunning pictures of wide deserts, lush forests, and scenic mountains. The posts painted a picture of joy, romance, and adventure, each one curated to show the world the life she always dreamed of. Gabby wasn't just documenting for herself, she wanted to become a travel influencer, to turn her passion into a career. She had launched a YouTube channel called Nomadic Static, where she and Brian uploaded their first vlog, showcasing snippets of their road trip. In the video, the couple smiled, laughed, and held hands as they hiked, cooked meals together, and explored nature's wonders. It was the image of a carefree couple living their best lives, and many of her followers admired her for chasing such an unconventional dream. But behind these perfect snapshots, there were hints of strain that most people couldn't see at the time. Close friends and family would later recall how Gabby was often the peacemaker, always working to keep things calm and positive, while Brian sometimes showed signs of being controlling and temperamental. Despite these troubling dynamics, Gabby remained committed to both the trip and her relationship. She believed that their love could withstand the pressures of the road. Their van became both their home and their world. Days were spent exploring canyons, hiking trails, and documenting nature's beauty. Nights were spent cooking simple meals by the fire, sleeping in the back of the van, and planning the next leg of their journey. For Gabby, this was more than travel, it was a lifestyle she wanted to share with the world, a story of freedom and adventure. Yet, as the days went on, the pressures of constant travel, isolation, and limited resources began to weigh heavily on the couple. Road trips may look glamorous on social media, but in reality, living out of a van requires patience, teamwork, and resilience. And when there are already cracks in a relationship, the confined space of a van can turn small disagreements into explosive confrontations. Still, to the outside world, everything looked perfect. Gabby's posts continued to portray joy, laughter, and beauty. Her bright smile masked the growing tension that few knew about. Social media became a shield, a way to maintain the image of a happy couple on the adventure of a lifetime. No one could have imagined that behind the smiles, something sinister was brewing. In many ways, the van life dream that Gabby worked so hard to create was an illusion. It was a carefully curated window into her life, one that made thousands of people admire her courage and sense of adventure. But soon, the truth behind that illusion would begin to surface, and it would reveal a story far darker than anyone expected. As Gabby and Brian continued their journey across America, the cracks in their relationship began to show more visibly. Tensions were simmering beneath the surface, and soon, the world would get its first real glimpse into their troubled dynamic. That glimpse came in the small desert town of Moab, Utah, on August 12, 2021, a day that would later become one of the most haunting pieces of evidence in Gabby's case. It started when a concerned bystander dialed 911. The caller reported seeing a young couple in the middle of a heated argument near a grocery store. The witness described Brian striking Gabby, and said the two appeared to be in a physical confrontation before driving away in their white van. That call set into motion a chain of events that would reveal troubling signs of abuse, and leave many questioning whether Gabby's life could have been saved if authorities had acted differently. Not long after, police located the van and pulled it over just outside Arches National Park. What followed was captured on bodycam footage that would later be seen by millions around the world. The recording showed a shaken Gabby Petito sitting in the passenger seat, her face streaked with tears, struggling to explain what had happened. She admitted to hitting Brian first, but her words were fragmented, and her body language told a deeper story. She was scared, overwhelmed, and emotionally distressed. Brian, on the other hand, appeared calm and collected. He laughed at times, made light of the situation, and painted Gabby as the aggressor. He told officers that Gabby was emotional and stressed from the road trip, and that she had scratched him during the argument. While scratches on his arms were visible, what stood out most was Gabby's fragile state, her hands fidgeting, her voice cracking, her constant apologies. She took the blame for everything, a pattern common among victims of emotional or physical abuse. The officers faced a decision: should they arrest someone, separate the couple, or let them go with a warning? After speaking to both Gabby and Brian, they decided not to press charges. Instead, they classified the incident as a mental health crisis. Gabby was told to stay in the van, while Brian spent the night at a hotel. To many watching the footage later, the officers' decision felt like a tragic missed opportunity. Experts in domestic violence would later analyze the bodycam footage and point out key warning signs: Gabby's anxious behavior, her tendency to blame herself, and Brian's calm but manipulative demeanor. All of it suggested an imbalance of power and control within the relationship. But on that hot August day, those signs were overlooked. The couple was allowed to continue their journey, reunited the next morning as though nothing had happened. For Gabby's family, this footage would later become almost unbearable to watch. Here was their daughter, crying for help in her own way, while the world stood by and didn't intervene strongly enough. It was the moment when the public narrative shifted, from a picture-perfect van life adventure to something far darker, a story filled with red flags that, tragically, no one acted on in time. The Moab encounter remains one of the most chilling what-ifs of this case. What if the officers had taken Gabby into protective custody? What if Brian had been charged for assault? What if they had been separated for longer than one night? These questions still linger, and they highlight just how fragile the line is between life and death when warning signs go unheeded. The van life dream was already unraveling. And soon, it would collapse completely. After the police encounter in Moab, Gabby and Brian continued their road trip. To the outside world, they still appeared to be chasing their van life dream, but in reality, the tension between them was growing heavier by the day. Friends and family began noticing subtle changes. Gabby's once frequent calls home became shorter, sometimes rushed. Text messages that usually carried her warmth and energy slowly began to sound off, cold, mechanical, or unusual, as if someone else may have been writing them. By late August 2021, Gabby was last physically seen alive at the Spread Creek dispersed camping area in Wyoming. Witnesses at a restaurant in Jackson Hole recalled seeing the couple just days earlier. Their accounts were chilling. Gabby was visibly upset, crying at the table, while Brian appeared angry, at one point storming out and back in again, creating a scene that left employees deeply unsettled. This was one of the last times anyone outside of Brian would ever see Gabby alive. Then, suddenly, communication stopped. Gabby's mother, Nicole Schmidt, who spoke with her daughter regularly, began to worry when days went by without hearing her voice. The final text messages Nicole received didn't sound like Gabby at all. One message referred to her grandfather by his first name, something Gabby never did. Another simply read, "No service in Yosemite." But the location didn't make sense. Yosemite was in California, far from where Gabby was supposed to be. To Nicole, it felt wrong, forced, suspicious. Meanwhile, on September 1, 2021, Brian Laundrie returned home to Northport, Florida. Alone. Driving the very same white van he and Gabby had shared on their adventure. But Gabby was not with him. Even more disturbing, he made no effort to contact Gabby's family, offer an explanation, or show concern. Instead, he quietly slipped back into his parents' home, as though nothing had happened. The contrast was striking. While Gabby's family panicked, desperately trying to reach her, Brian acted with eerie calm. He refused to answer questions, refused to speak publicly, and most shockingly, he lawyered up almost immediately. The Laundrie family offered no explanation, no help, only silence. To the Petito family, this silence was deafening. Their daughter was missing, and the one person who should have answers was hiding behind an attorney. By September 11th, Gabby's family had had enough. They officially reported her missing to the Suffolk County Police Department in New York, sparking what would become one of the most widely covered missing person cases in modern history. The image of Gabby, the young, vibrant travel blogger, spread across every news channel and social media platform. Her face was everywhere, and the public demanded answers. Where was Gabby Petito? As the search intensified, so did the suspicions. People asked, why did Brian return alone? Why wasn't he helping with the search? Why had he gone silent when Gabby's family needed him most? Social media detectives began combing through Gabby and Brian's posts, analyzing every caption, every photo, every detail of their trip. Some internet sleuths even helped identify locations where Gabby had last been seen, providing leads to investigators. But as hope began to fade, one horrifying thought loomed larger with each passing day: Gabby wasn't just missing. Something terrible had happened to her. The disappearance marked the point of no return. The dream of adventure had turned into a nightmare, and the mystery of Gabby Petito was about to unravel into one of the most shocking true crime cases of the decade. When Gabby Petito was officially reported missing on September 11, 2021, the case exploded into national headlines almost overnight. What started as a family's desperate plea quickly transformed into a massive, nationwide effort to uncover the truth. The image of Gabby, a young, bright, adventurous soul, was plastered across news broadcasts, online articles, and social media feeds. Suddenly, the world was watching, and millions of strangers became invested in the search for her. Law enforcement agencies across multiple states got involved. The FBI, local police in Wyoming, Utah, and Florida, and even volunteer search and rescue teams began coordinating efforts. Helicopters scanned rugged landscapes, drones flew over desolate campsites, and officers combed through forests, rivers, and trails that Gabby and Brian might have visited. Every potential lead was investigated. But what made this case truly unique was the role of social media. Unlike many missing person cases that quietly fade into obscurity, Gabby's story ignited a global movement online. Thousands of internet sleuths joined forces, analyzing her Instagram posts, TikTok videos, and YouTube channel. They retraced her digital footprints, zoomed into photos for hidden clues, and debated inconsistencies in timelines. Hashtags like #FindGabby began trending, drawing international attention and turning the case into a viral mystery. One of the most chilling pieces of evidence surfaced thanks to an ordinary couple vlogging their own road trip. While reviewing footage from their dashcam, they noticed something unsettling: a white van, eerily similar to Gabby and Brian's, parked near the Spread Creek dispersed camping area in Wyoming, the very same place Gabby was last believed to be. This discovery, made not by police but by vigilant citizens, became a critical turning point in the investigation. Meanwhile, the behavior of Brian Laundrie and his family only deepened suspicions. Brian refused to speak with investigators. His parents issued no pleas for Gabby's safe return. Instead, they closed their doors, shut down communication, and directed all inquiries to their lawyer. To the Petito family, this silence was cruel. Their daughter was missing, and the one person who could provide answers was stonewalling authorities. Public outrage grew. Protesters gathered outside the Laundrie home in Florida, holding signs and chanting for justice. They demanded to know why Brian had returned home without Gabby and why he wasn't cooperating. The silence from the Laundries became almost as infamous as the disappearance itself. As days turned into weeks, the search became more desperate. FBI teams searched miles of wilderness. Volunteers scoured campsites. Tips poured in from across the country, sightings of the van, possible locations, strange encounters. Every lead brought a mix of hope and dread. Would this be the one that finally uncovered the truth? The nationwide search was relentless, but it was also heartbreaking. Each day that passed without Gabby only reinforced the sinking feeling that the outcome would be tragic. And yet, the public held on, united in their hope to bring her home. But deep down, investigators knew they weren't searching for a missing traveler anymore. They were searching for a victim. The nationwide effort wasn't about whether something had happened to Gabby, it was about where she was, and when the truth would finally surface. Soon, that truth would come. And it would shock the world. On September 19, 2021, just 8 days after Gabby Petito was reported missing, the search that had captivated the nation came to a devastating end. FBI agents, working in the rugged wilderness of Wyoming's Bridger-Teton National Forest, made a grim announcement. Human remains had been discovered near the Spread Creek dispersed camping area, the very same site where the white van had been spotted in dashcam footage. The location was haunting. Nestled between towering mountains and dense forests, the area was remote, quiet, and unforgiving. Investigators had been scouring this region for days, guided by leads from witnesses and digital evidence. When they finally stumbled upon the remains, the silence of the forest became deafening. Everyone knew what this meant, but no one wanted to say it out loud until confirmation came. Just a day later, the FBI officially identified the remains as those of Gabby Petito. The world, which had been holding its breath in hopes of a safe return, was shattered. Gabby's adventure, her dream of freedom, exploration, and storytelling, had ended in the most tragic way imaginable. The autopsy results painted an even darker picture. Gabby had been killed by manual strangulation, her death ruled a homicide. The medical examiner estimated she had died approximately 3 to 4 weeks before her body was found, placing the time of her death in late August, the same period when her family received those suspicious, out-of-character text messages. To many, this confirmed their worst fears. Gabby had likely been dead while Brian quietly drove her van back to Florida, hiding behind silence and legal counsel. The Petito family's heartbreak was immeasurable. For weeks, they had clung to hope, but now they were faced with the cruel reality that their daughter's life had been stolen from her. In a heartbreaking statement, Gabby's father described her as the brightest light in every room she entered. Tributes poured in from around the world, people who had never met her but felt connected through her story. Social media transformed into a sea of condolences, artwork, and messages of love for Gabby. Meanwhile, the focus shifted squarely onto Brian Laundrie. The timeline was damning. He returned home without Gabby, refused to cooperate, and now, after her body had been found, was officially named a person of interest. The discovery of Gabby's remains turned what had been a missing person investigation into a homicide case, and the hunt for answers, and for Brian himself, reached a fever pitch. But there was something chilling about the discovery site itself. Investigators noted how Gabby's remains were not far from where the van had been spotted. The area wasn't hidden in some far-off wilderness, it was accessible, as if Brian hadn't even cared enough to conceal what he had done. It suggested a crime of anger, not calculation, a burst of violence that ended Gabby's life and was followed by a cowardly retreat home. The discovery of Gabby Petito's body was more than just the end of the search. It became a symbol of a larger tragedy, of domestic violence, of missed warning signs, and of a young woman's life cut short while the world watched. It forced people everywhere to confront the uncomfortable truth. Behind the perfect Instagram posts and smiling photos, there had been a desperate struggle for safety, one that ended in silence among the trees of Wyoming. Gabby's story was no longer about a missing traveler. It was now a story of justice, and of finding the man who had taken her life. After the discovery of Gabby Petito's body, the focus of the case shifted immediately to one man, Brian Laundrie. He was no longer just the quiet fiancé who had returned home without Gabby, he was now the central figure in a nationwide manhunt. The evidence was piling up, the timeline was damning, and the world wanted answers. But Brian wasn't talking. In fact, he had vanished. On September 13, 2021, his parents claimed that Brian had gone for a hike in the Carlton Reserve, a sprawling, swampy wilderness near their home in Northport, Florida. Days passed, and Brian never returned. Soon, his parents reported him missing, sparking yet another massive search effort, this time, for Gabby's suspected killer. The Carlton Reserve was treacherous terrain, 25,000 acres of thick forests, flooded trails, snakes, and alligators. Law enforcement, K-9 units, and even divers scoured the area, but days turned into weeks with no sign of Brian. The mystery deepened. Where was he? Had he escaped? Was someone helping him hide? Or had he taken his own life in the wilderness? Meanwhile, the Petito family fought for justice. They spoke publicly about their daughter, demanding accountability and urging Brian to come forward. Across the country, protesters continued to gather outside the Laundrie home, accusing his parents of covering for him. The Laundrie's silence only fueled speculation. Many believed they knew more than they admitted, especially given how quickly Brian had disappeared. The FBI eventually issued a federal arrest warrant for Brian, not for murder, but for fraud, using Gabby's debit card after her death. It was a technicality, a legal tool meant to tighten the net around him while investigators built their homicide case. But as weeks passed with no trace of Brian, frustration mounted. Then, on October 20, 2021, the search came to a shocking conclusion. In a previously flooded section of the Carlton Reserve, authorities discovered human remains along with personal items belonging to Brian Laundrie, a backpack, a notebook, and clothing. DNA testing confirmed the remains were Brian's. The coroner determined he had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But it was the contents of that notebook that delivered the final, chilling piece of the puzzle. In handwritten pages, Brian admitted to killing Gabby Petito. He described her death as a mercy killing, claiming she had been injured and in pain during their trip. Investigators, however, saw through the words. It was not mercy, but violence, manipulation, and control that ended Gabby's life. The notebook was his final confession, his cowardly attempt to rewrite the truth before taking his own life. For Gabby's family, Brian's death brought no real closure. He had escaped justice, denying them the chance to see him held accountable in a court of law. Still, the confession notebook at least confirmed what they already knew: Brian Laundrie was responsible for their daughter's murder. The aftermath of the case left deep scars, not only on Gabby's loved ones, but on the nation. Her story became a rallying cry for domestic violence awareness, reminding the world how easily warning signs can be missed, and how quickly a life can be stolen. Her face, once known as a symbol of adventure and freedom, became a reminder of a darker truth, that behind carefully curated smiles and photos, pain and danger can be hidden in plain sight. In the end, the so-called van life dream had collapsed into tragedy. Gabby's story will forever haunt the public consciousness, not just because of how she died, but because of how many chances there had been to save her. And because justice, in the end, was stolen along with her life.